Hi and welcome. Today I have a new size because I have an Etsy shop and I thought I would maybe offer some handmade planner dashboards in the Etsy shop. So as I'm designing them, I thought, well, I'll still record it because it is a design. But so when you see it say planner dashboard, that's what it's for. They're going to be available on my Etsy shop. So I'm starting with, this is a personal size, so it's 3.75 by 6.75, and this is Bristol Smooth. So it's 103 pounds, 280 GSM, I think that's right. And I'm just kind of smooshing on some Distress ink. I started with salvaged patina here, and I'm gonna do a little drying in between layers. And just in case you hear it in the background, my neighbor is out with her little girl, and she is giving screams of joy because she's having so much fun out there. Um, I waited because it is chilly out, so I didn't expect her to be out long, but she's still out there and I just couldn't wait anymore. So, just in case you hear that. My second color is Rusty Hinge. I just love the look of Salvage Patina and Rusty Hinge together. So I'm doing some splattering first and or spattering, and now I'm gonna just add, after I dry it, I'm gonna add a little bit of smooshing of that color as well. So that is dry, and I'm just going to go around the edges with some of the Rusty Hinge. I end up using some vintage photo later because I just, to me, wasn't dark enough. My goal with these dashboards is that I make it with items that I can repeat. This is kind of a pattern, so I'm going to be making it over and over again, so it will never be exactly the same, but I'm going to try to do the same thing over and over again. So I'm going to be using the big moth, but first I want to lay down some stamping in the background. And so that stamp is from Grunged. Tim Holtz, Stampers Anonymous Grunged. And I'm using Pebble Beach. Why is that coming? Pebble Beach. And I noticed after it was done that it was kind of askew, but it really doesn't matter. Um, by the time it's all said and done, you don't see much of it. Well, you do see it, but um, you don't notice that it's askew. And then this stamp, I think, is from Eccentric. I didn't write this one down. I think it's Eccentric. and that was also with Pebble Beach. And I'm just trying to get some stamped images down the center-ish of the card. And I add this guy, and he is from the Obscure set, and so I really just want kind of like half of him to come off. And again, I'm just setting down a base, and I don't really at this point know how much will be seen when all is said and done. This stamp is one of my favorite text stamps. It's also from the Obscure, but I like the size of the text, and that is just a random section, and you really can't even tell what it says. It might even be in another language. I've never really tried to read it, but and I did that in graphite, archival ink. And sometimes if you don't want the whole section of the pad, you can just ink a little bit of it and press that down in certain areas. So now I'm going to add a little bit of collage, and again I'm choosing things that I can repeat easily. So old book paper is easy to come by, and I'm using some vintage looking washi tape. I've got a bunch of that, and that's easy to come by. So sometimes I rip the edges, and this particular washi does rip pretty easily, but sometimes I also use my little paper scissors that have a kind of a cut edge, or it looks like a ripped edge, and so sometimes I'll grab those. And I'm just trying to lay down a few things to see how I like it. And so I'm going to start gluing. And that first piece just ripped right in half. It is old book paper. But that's okay. You're not really going to see much of it because I have things going on top of it. So it will be totally fine. And I'm using my Tombow glue stick, which is great for thin paper. Once it gets a little thicker, then you want to use a liquid glue, but actually it's much better than a liquid glue because a liquid glue sometimes leaves it bumpy. It doesn't cover the whole place. It just is not as clean looking. just going to trim the edge. And because this is a dashboard, it very well could be viewed on both sides. Most likely will be. So I'm just gonna smoosh some paint down or some ink down on the reverse side and also do a little bit of stamping on that side. I give it a dry, and my focal image is going to be this large moth, and this is from the Specimens stamp collection by Tim Holtz. And I'm just going to use the same two colors. I really don't want to introduce anything new right here. So salvage patina on most of the wing. You can also use the spray ink and just kind of put a little spray ink down on your mat and put that on. Actually, I think that does better color. I'm not sure why I didn't use that method right off, but it's different ways to do it. And now I'm adding some Rusty Hinge. And I'm taking some scorched timber and just going over the body. It really could be anything. I think on I also did an A5 size. I think I did that in the Rusty Hinge, and I think I liked it better. Just was a little more colorful. So this is Salvage Patina Distress Spritz. And I spray it on, but you could also, and what I normally do, just spray it on the mat and paint it on just to give it a little bit of shimmer. I add it to the wings and to the eyes. But I'm just trying to give it a little bit of shimmer. And then give it a dry. And once it's dry, I Just gonna fussy cut it out. Now you notice I didn't try to do the little antennae. No, I'm not going to do that. And they would probably rip off pretty easily. I could draw them on once it's on, but I don't even do that. I don't think anyone's going to say, "Where's the antennae?" So I go around the white edge that I just cut with Vintage Photo, and I figure out a place I want to put my moth, realizing, of course, that some of it's got to go. So just thinking about that. But before I put that down, I'm going to add some vertical interest by adding some of my aged tape. And because the tape is pretty wide, I cut it in half, and I put one a little higher and one a little lower. And I'm going to add a little strip, kind of just to sit right underneath the moth. And I have this, let's see, this is from the Professor stamp collection. So I just have a scrap, and I'm adding some, I think I used Pebbled Beach. Yeah, Pebble Beach. I keep wanting to add a D to that, but it really is not pebbled, it's pebble. And when I pull out my stamp platform, I can stamp it twice to give it a nice solid image. And then I'm just going to flip my paper around and do the other side, so I'll have two of them. I'll cut them apart. That's perfect. But I don't want to leave it white. And so I'm going to add some Vintage Photo. And I want it to look a little mottled because I'm thinking this is old. Or I want it to look old anyways. And then I splatter that with some scorched timber. And then I just add it to the edges. And like I said, I'm making two, so I cut it apart. And any raw edge that I create, I want to add a little bit of scorched timber to it. And I've also punched a little circle out of some scrapbook scraps. This is kind of a vintage looking, almost looks like the color of rusty hinge, but it's vintagey looking. And so I have a stamp from the field notes, and it's just like a certified stamp. It actually says received. So I stamped that on it, and I've already gone around it with Vintage Photo. And now I'm just putting my last couple ephemera items on. This is from the number strips with Tim Holtz, and I realize that this item is going to change slightly each time. And so in my listing, I point at it and say, this item varies in what it says. And since I wanted the bottom of the moth to kind of sit on this ruler line, I'm trying to figure out placement of them. And I don't want to cut off both wings of the moth, so I position it so that only the right wing gets trimmed. And I put down the piece of ephemera. Now here, I think my camera got off. I've trimmed that leaf, and I've added a little bit of gold dots with my gold pasta paint pen just on the body of the moth and then at the very top edge of the wings. And now I'm going to do a little stamping, and I've already sprayed it with a acrylic spray, but then I decided I wanted to add a couple more stamps, so instead of just stamping it directly, which for something like that I probably would, but this is going to be over top of acrylic spray, which doing number 2, I won't do that. I will stamp it before I spray it. Anyway, so I'm fixing it so that I can repeat the stamp because the first one's not going to be good. See, it's not very dark, and I do want it to be dark. I think I end up doing a 3-part stamp. And that looks good. And then I also do one kind of kitty corner from it. another number stamp from the same Field Notes stamp set. And I go through the same process. And here I'm using graphite. That's Tim Holtz Archival in the color graphite. And I stamp it 3 times. And that is it. I got some final pictures coming up. If you haven't subscribed, please do. If you like what you saw, give me a thumbs up. I will have a link to this if you're interested in the description, but have a great day.